in a moment. Okay, so we're back to the PowerPoint. Oop, wrong PowerPoint. There we are. So let's keep going. Okay, the brain has hollow chambers filled with cerebral spinal fluid. Cerebral spinal fluid is produced in the choroid plexus. This fluid circulates from the ventricles and central canal to the subarachnoid space and then ultimately to the bloodstream. So if you look at the ventricles of the brain from side view and anterior view, you can see the lateral ventricles are very, very large and paired. Then you have the third ventricle, and you have the mesencephalic aqueduct, and then the fourth ventricle. And then that fluid is going down the full length of the spinal cord. The circulation of cerebral spinal fluid is going to be carried in through the arachnoid space. The choroid plexus will make that fluid. So this fluid serves to cushion and protect the brain. Cerebral spinal fluid, again, is formed in choroid plexuses. I'm not going to ask about this type of information. I just want you to know the dura mater, the pia mater, and the arachnoid layer, the two dura mater layers. Okay, functions of the cerebrum. Okay, so here's the central sulcus. Here's the primary motor cortex. Here's the primary sensory cortex. Frontal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital lobe, parietal lobe. So this primary sensory cortex in the postcentral gyrus, that information is where sensory information from all parts of your body, from your digestive tract, from your autonomic nervous system, from your muscles, from your joint position, all of that is relayed through the thalamus into the cerebral hemispheres here, so that the primary processing and analysis of sensory information takes place in this primary sensory cortex in the postcentral gyrus, and then in the precentral gyrus, where the primary motor cortex is, that's where that sensory information is processing, leading to complex muscle contractions and so on. So hemispheric lateralization. Okay, we got another person coming in. Okay, admit. Okay, so we're back to the PowerPoint. So lateralization means that different functions are in the left cerebral hemisphere or the right. So the speech center, writing, the auditory cortex is on both sides, general interpretive center, visual cortex on both sides. Here we have spatial visualization, analysis by touch. So you can see that the left and the right hemispheres are able to have specialized functions with some variation from left to right. We're not going to worry about brain waves. Not going to worry about basal nuclei now. Okay. So the diencephalon and brain stem, or a switching and relay center, integrates conscious and unconscious motor and sensory pathways. The epithalamus that contains the choroid plexus, which is one of the sites of cerebral spinal fluid, the thalamus and hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is involved in the regulation of many hormones in the anterior pituitary and in the release of hormones from the posterior pituitary. So if we look again at those structures, diencephalon with the thalamus, the superior colliculi, the inferior colliculi, which together is called the corpora quadrigemina, because there's four elevations here. You should be able to identify all the cranial nerves, and that'll be available. And here is the superior colliculus, the inferior colliculus, the thalamus, and so on. I'm not going to ask any questions about cerebral peduncles or cerebellar peduncles. Okay, what does the thalamus do? It relays and filters all ascending information. Some of that's going to go to the cerebral cortex. Others will go to the basal nuclei and the brain stems. So it's going to coordinate voluntary and involuntary motor behavior. The hypothalamus secretes hormones, coordinates nervous and endocrine function, regulates body temperature, and produces emotions and behavioral drives. Midbrain is involved in processing visual and auditory information. That's going to be at the inferior colliculus and the superior colliculus. The pons is linked to the cerebellum and controls movement. The medulla oblongata is another relay site of sensory information, and very importantly, regulates autonomic functions. Okay, so what's the cerebellum do? The little brain oversees postural muscles, meaning that you've learned how to walk, sit down, maintain your posture. That's what the cerebellum does. Okay, stores patterns of movement. You learn to ride a bike, play tennis, fine-tunes most movements, and links to the brainstem, cerebrum, and spinal cord. Functions of the medulla oblongata, links to brain and spinal cord, sends information to the cerebral cortex, the ascending information, controls heartbeat and respiratory rhythms. Okay, let's stop there. Go back to stop recording. We have another